Today I'm going to tell you everything that I love and hate about my 2018 Buick Encore. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda out here with my 2018 Buick Encore, and I've had this for a little while now and been playing around with it, and I thought I would share with you everything in excruciating detail that I love and hate about it. So here it is in all its glory. One of the things that I actually like about this is that it is a good replacement for what I needed. So if you have been following my channel a while, you know that I had a Fiat 500 back in the day. I loved that car. It was just small. It was easy to get around in. You actually felt like it was a spacesuit, like you were wearing it. You could just jump into it anytime. It didn't really feel like you were getting into a big car. You could run out, drive around, run errands, put stuff in it, come back, and it was just a great little car for being able to run errands quickly and comfortably. You know, easy to park, easy to maneuver. And that's what I was really looking for, is something small that could do that. And actually, there was a part of me that was actually thinking about buying another Fiat 500. I know there's a Fiat 500X, which is probably the competitor to this car. It's an SUV, and I actually thought about that too. But one of the things that I really liked about the Buick is that it was going to be quiet. It's going to have all the GM tech in it. It's going to be pretty reliable, decently reliable, I guess. You know, easy to service, relatively cheap to do all that. And I actually like the looks. I actually like this little crossover look. It kind of reminds me of a 2000 Dodge Caravan. This is a little bit more elegant, a little more streamlined than the older original Buick Encore, which was a little frumpy, but actually like those two. I thought it actually had a pretty mean, aggressive front end. I didn't like the grille in that car, but overall, I kind of liked it. Now, one of the things that I really do like about the exterior here, I won't call them hockey sticks, I'll call them more like Nike swooshes, because they have like this check mark light above the headlight here. So it's an LED eyebrow. Now that is echoed a lot in this car. The chrome trim, which I actually do like along here, is also a little swoosh. And then even the lights back here, the tail lights, they have the little swoosh as well. So that is kind of echoed throughout there. And it's not something that you just throw in there because it ties the car together, but this actually is nice. It kind of frames the ridge here on the back of the car, so it kind of makes it look a little boxier here, like kind of there's a distinct edge as opposed to making it just rounded like the older lights did. So I kind of like that. Now, one of the things that I actually do like about this, I didn't try to get it with this, but this model is the Sport Touring model, so it's kind of in the middle of the pack. There is a lower end trim, which I didn't want. I specifically didn't want. That was excluded from my search criteria, but I would have gone with the Sport Touring, or I think they call it the preferred package. Now, the Sport Touring has these wheels on it, which kind of look like BBS style racing wheels. They're this gunmetal gray. I actually think they're really nice. I wasn't looking for them. I actually kind of like the preferred wheels better. They look a little bit like turbine blades or something like that. But I think these do look a little sporty. I like that they're darker in color, so they're a little bit more subdued. They give the car a little bit of a sporty look. They're actually crossovers from the original Encore, I think. So I think the original model came with these wheels, so I'm sure they're in production and they were like, yeah, we can keep throwing these on the new Encore, so they did. Now, I also will say that the wheels are actually decently large. They're 18 inches here. So, as you can see here, they look okay. They look right. 18-inch wheels are not big by any means anymore, but what I actually like is that they're a good balance. They look decent. I won't say they look overly sporty, but being also pretty small, you get a really nice sidewall here, which I think helps the ride quality. So what you get is a lot of tire on there to help absorb undulations on the road, imperfections, potholes, speed bumps, those types of things. And so you get a pretty comfy ride in here. I think the thing that I'll mention during the drive is that the car wobbles a little bit because of kind of its proportions, that it's very upright and it's pretty narrow. But in terms of absorbing the imperfections on the road, the cracks, you know, you can see the roads around here are not great. The tires actually really help with that. Now, one of the other things I like about this is that there is a spoiler up here. On my Fiat 500, it had a very similar rounded back end here, but it didn't have the spoiler. That came on the Sport version, and that does actually a lot for the looks here. I think it probably helps with the aerodynamics a little bit too, but it just helps kind of give the back end here a little bit longer of a look. Now, it's kind of interesting because the spoiler is open. It kind of reminds me of the Toyota CHR, so you can actually stick your hand all the way through there. I will also say that I like the fact that there are door handle buttons for the keyless entry on all the doors. So if I use one of the buttons other than the driver's side, it will unlock all the doors. If I do it on the driver's side, I can set it to unlock all the doors or just the driver's door. I actually have it set to unlock all the doors because I'm not really worried about opening the driver door and someone hunching over here and then jumping in and then hijacking me or something like that. And most of the time, if I've got someone with me, they're always pulling on the door too early. So I actually like that you have buttons all over. So if someone else opens the door before I do, as long as I'm standing near the car with the remote, all the doors will unlock. I also want to say that I like the Capless Gas Filler right there. This is something that is on more and more cars. It maybe felt like a novelty at first, but it's actually really nice not having to worry about a cap, whether it's twisted on and secure or leaking air. It's just kind of nice to be able to open up this little flap, fill this sucker up, and then actually close it up without having to worry about a cap. So capless filler on there. Now I will say the gas tank on this is pretty small. When it's gotten close to empty, I filled it up, and I actually thought this was maybe a 12-gallon tank because I always put like 11 gallons into it when it's really empty. It's actually a 14-gallon tank, which is actually nice because it gives me a little comfort that there's a couple extra gallons in there even when I think I'm pretty empty, but it's a pretty small tank. That being said, I'm getting about 28 miles to the gallon on average on this car, so I can get about 360 miles to a tank, which is pretty nice. Now, I also want to go back here to the back. One of the things that I don't really like is that there is no automatic rear hatch on this particular model. It is on these hydraulics, and so once you get it up to about halfway point, it will take over and open on its own, but it's not that quick. So I actually thought, well, maybe I need to replace these, but I don't think I do. I think that's just the nature of how they work. I will say what I did here is I disconnected this, so you can attach this to the tailgate here, and this will kind of lift up this little hatch, but I've actually disconnected it from the tailgate as well as pulled it out of the little pins here, the little fulcrums there, because I wanted to show you what I actually like about this is, one, it provides protection, but when you don't need it, it will slide right in the back here. So there's a channel that will go right up against the back seats, and so you can have actually this additional area up here, which actually makes a difference. There isn't a bunch of additional area because this slants forward so much, but if you have something tall and you don't know where to put this, it's really nice that they make use of the extra space here. And I think you can also slide it underneath here where we have the spare tire and the subwoofer, but it's nice that they make that because then you're not putting it on the ground. Now I also will say under here what I like about the spare tire is that they have the styrofoam surround with all the stuff that you need. So capless gas fillers will need a little funnel in case you need to fill this up on the road with a gas tank or add additives. So there's a funnel there. There's also your jack and all that, and so it's actually really easy to get to. The jack handle is back there, so I like the fact that this is pretty well organized, which is really nice too. Now, the other thing that I like about here in the trunk is that you have a couple of cubbies. This isn't huge, but it's maybe about half the size of a shoebox, so you can definitely put some stuff in here. On this side, we also have this pull-away door here. Again, not super deep, but it's pretty large. You can put like an air compressor or road flares or something like that, tow straps if you need to. We also have the little hooks for grocery bags or netting if you want to put that in there, so I like that we have trunk cubby holes. The other thing down here, and I actually ordered a protector to put down here, but what I noticed is that there's like this little clear vinyl here, and I think this is like an XPEL type of stuff, so it's going to protect. You can see here as you drag stuff out, you might hit this bumper, and so instead of scratching up the paint, got this like clear film on there. So I didn't expect that, and in fact I just thought they would just leave that up to you and scratch up the bumper and get that repainted, or maybe sell you an aftermarket strip, but it's kind of nice that there's this little vinyl cover on there to help protect that. Now, a couple things that I actually really like about this, I'm going to show you here. I'm going to unlock the door here, go over here. I love the fact that we have a keyless wireless remote, so if I lock it, I can actually start this car just like this. I can hold down this start button, yes, and start this bad boy up. If you are a subscriber to OnStar, in this case, you can actually do it from an app as well, and then I can stop it here with that. But then if I unlock the door and say open it like this, what it has is a delayed remote locking. So if I just start walking away from the car and the remote gets far enough away, the car will lock, as you can see right there. The only thing I don't like about it is that it honks. I wish GM would add some sort of other beep to it, like some sort of chime, like beep, or something a little less annoying and brash than a honk. I just feel a little bit like it sounds like someone pulled up to your house and is letting you know to come outside and meet them. So the honk is just so harsh. I don't know why they can't come up with something else like beep beep or whatever, but the honk just feels a little disrespectful to me. But I definitely can get used to the remote here, just walking up, putting my thumb on the door handle, getting in, and then starting the car up, and never taking this out of my pocket. And even when I'm leaving, if my hands are filled windshields, as soon as I walk away from the car and it detects me gone, it's going to lock all those doors, assuming they're all closed, but then it's going to lock all those doors. The only thing that's going to happen is I'm going to jump out of my shorts because every time it honks, I think the car's rolling towards me or someone's going to run me over. All right, one of the things that I hate about this car, though, is the narrow track width. So it might be a little hard to see here, but the wheels are really tucked inside of those fenders. So there's quite a bit of arch left on the wheels, both front and back, where you could actually have those wheels pushed out a little further, would fill out the car a little bit more. I could probably put on 35mm spacers here and actually make this look a little more sure-footed. It's just the nature of this and building it on top of a car platform, which I think is shared with the Chevy Sonic. So I wouldn't do it on this car because you're going to probably trade off a little bit of the driving dynamics and the handling, but they are just kind of tucked in a little bit like a train car to me, and it's kind of annoying a little bit to me. It's not that big of a deal, but I definitely don't like the way they look there. Now, a couple things that I don't like, and the windows are rolled down all the way here because it's pretty hot out here, and if I jump in and I'm going to sweat to death. But one of the things that I don't really like that they do is they put like matte black finish on top of the posts here. I actually, because this is black, I wish they had left this black or made it gloss black, because when you have the windows up here, you know, it kind of looks glossy black. And so if you have gloss black here, it kind of makes the thing, it's a little bit of an illusion that it's a whole single pane of glass. It doesn't really trick your mind. But when you have a flat black here, and then two glossy panels side to side, it kind of makes it stick out. So I actually don't like the fact that they make that matte as opposed to glossy black. The other thing that I don't really like here, and I get why they did it, is they have this little window extension. It kind of screams a little old to me. I'm sure it's because of the way the window rolls down into the door. It's a packaging issue. And so by putting this little window let up here, you can still have the glass. So on one hand, I like it because it helps with the visibility, but on the other hand, it looks disconnected from the glass. The other thing that I don't like, again, is this fake matte black extension right here. Again, if this were like a glossy black, I think it would help blend in with the glass just a little bit better. I get that this is a style issue here, but again, the matte black there kind of makes it stand out a little bit more than it should. All right, and now come back to the headlights. I actually like these headlights. One of the things that I really like are all the LEDs. The only issue with me on this one is that these are halogen bulbs here. So you get a little bit of a yellow light contrasting with a bright white light up here. So actually, I'm going to replace these with LED bulbs at some point, see if I can just make it look a little more consistent with the rest of the lighting and a little brighter. But one of the things that's gone now is the little blue ring that was around some of the early Buicks. And I actually kind of like that. It made it look like Optimus Prime eyes or something. You got a little bit of reflection of the blue and different facets of the reflectors, and so it gave it a little bit of a jewel-like look. So I'm kind of disappointed that Buick dropped that, because it was kind of a nice little Buick thing. It was a small thing. It probably didn't cost more than a few cents to make the little blue rings that went around the bulbs there, but I kind of wish they had done something, maybe a little blue outline or something like that, to kind of add that little crystal look back to the lights. So kind of missed that. All right, so let's jump in this and show you what I like about the interior here. First of all of the materials here are pretty nice. You know, this is, I always call it elephant skin. It's just a nice texture. It looks like leather. You can see the little pebbling in there. It's actually a pretty soft touch. I almost don't care about the touch as much as I do care about the looks, and this looks pretty good. This looks pretty rough and tough, and even though you have some molding lines there which tend to give it away if you don't have stitching to show that it's not actual leather, I think it looks pretty good. This is actually really soft to the touch. I don't know that it needs to be, but it's like a vinyl and has some stitching here, and it's not a molded in stitching. It actually looks like a real stitch right there, which is a nice little touch as well. Down here it's a little harder plastic, but it mimics the upper portion right there. And so I think overall the qualities look pretty good. Again, same type of material over here, a little bit softer touch material on this vinyl down here. You'll see this in the Terrain and a lot of other GM cars. The switch components and the door handle bucket here are all that harder plastic that you'll find in pretty much everything. But I do like this kind of metallic gray finish right here. They kind of do that on some of the other cars like the Camaro as well. So it's kind of nice, and this flows together really well. But this corporate soft touch material that they're using, combined with the piano black finish there, I think actually works pretty nicely. And in fact, it's kind of like the Cadillacs of 5 or 6 years ago. I would say that kind of fit and finish now is available in the Buicks when it tended to be a little bit cheaper, Fisher Price like plastic. So I really like that. The other thing I actually really like are these seats. So generally, I do not like cloth in seats. It just looks really cheap to me. It looks like cheap denim or canvas or something like that. Now, I will say that I think that these are leatherette, so it's just kind of like a vinyl on the sides here, but you really never can tell because leather and vinyl is always covered with a paint. So it looks fine. It feels just fine too. It's got a nice stitching on it. But the centerpiece here is a cloth, and what I want to show you, maybe you can see in the light here, is that there is just a little bit of this diamond pattern on it. But on top of that, I feel like it is impregnated with some sort of paint or material. So it's kind of like reinforced with some sort of paint in it, because it's a lot tighter weave and looks pretty good. It kind of reminds me of actually the painted canvas that you get on Louis Vuitton bags. It's not quite that painted, but you can see in between the diamonds there, it just seems like it's compressed. And so I don't know if they're stamping it or painting it or soaking it in something. But in terms of cloth seats, normally I just hate them. I want to replace them. But in this case, I actually really like it. It doesn't look like Alcantara or anything like that, but it is pretty grippy. It's not as hot in the summer like right now. It's not as cold in the winter. So there's a lot of advantages to it. And yet they did a really nice job of making this attractive enough that I want to keep this. And actually, I might actually even ask for it over the standard leather seats. Now, I'm over here on the passenger side because there's a couple things that I like and don't like about this passenger seat. First of all, the passenger seat reclines, but what I want to show you here, and it's going to be maybe a little hard to demonstrate, is that the passenger seat reclining pivots up here as opposed to pivoting down here. So what ends up happening is, you can see the way this happens is it's kind of going to push your butt forward. This actually reminds me of the early Infiniti G35s, where the back seats would also recline, but they would pivot really high, so they really weren't comfortable to recline. So if you wanted to fall asleep in this car in the passenger seat, I think this is probably going to be the least comfortable passenger seat to recline in and relax in. Now, all of that is because of what the seat does. So if I hit this lever again, the whole seat moves forward, and that's a little bit different. And that's why it has to pivot up here to fold flat, because now it becomes a little bit of a workbench for the driver. Now, a lot of people have asked, why is this a mesh pocket right here, and the pocket on the driver's seat is full covered in vinyl? And I think the reason is because if you have stuff here, now the driver can see what's in the pocket, as opposed to trying to see and letting stuff flop around. So if you have some documents, some pens or whatever, maybe even your laptop or tablet over here, you can see it really easily, and this is like a little workspace. The other thing that I really like about this is that I'm actually going to do a road trip here, and I'm actually going to be sleeping in the car a couple days as I traverse America. And what I noticed here in the SUVs is that usually if I put the back seats down and sleep in it, there's enough space for me to sleep, head to toe between the front seat and the rear gate. That is not the case in this because of how short this is. So from the back of the seat to the edge of that tailgate is only 5 feet. So that's obviously not long enough for me to lay down as a 5'8". But if I put this down and then put those seats down, I can actually put an air mattress across here and actually sleep and lay out. Again, it'll probably be a little lumpy, but the nice thing is I can actually stretch out completely and actually camp inside of here. So I am going to do that, and that's why I really like this. It also allows me to put something that's long all the way up here. So if you're putting up some 2x4s or something like this and you want to run them all the way to the back, you can do that. I actually measured from the front of the glove box here to the front edge of that tailgate is actually 8 feet. So if it's going to be any longer than that, it's not going to fit, or you're going to be putting it up on this dashboard up here or something like that. But you can get something in here comfortably that's maybe 7 feet long. So if you have skis, snowboard, lumber, if you could afford it, then you'll have all of that too. So that's pretty nice. All right. One of the other things that I actually like too is that there is a little underseat drawer here on the passenger side. There's a little arrow that shows you have to lift it up in order to pull it out. It's not huge, but it definitely could be nice to put some small stuff, your flashlight, a little extra storage, because in this Encore they lost this upper glove box up here, so you only have the glove box down here. So that's nice that they made some extra storage in there too. All right, let's come back around here and jump on in, because now I want to show you some of the stuff that I really love from the driver's side here. First thing is that this car feels huge inside. So yes, I can almost touch the door. If I lean over, I can touch the door there. So side to side, it's not that wide. But one of the things that they do here is the windshield is huge. In fact, what you can see here is this dashboard is huge. So when I was looking at the Kia Soul, it's like, why is the hood so long when the hood on the Buick Encore is not that long? Well, one of the reasons is that I think most little crossovers will have the windshield start right here or end right here. And that means dashboard is a regular depth, but then you're adding like another foot to the front of the hood. So it's partly a style issue, but I think that steeper rake to the windshield will probably give you a little bit more aerodynamic advantage too. But that being said, then you have this huge dashboard. I mean, I could eat Thanksgiving dinner off this thing. If you throw papers on this sucker, you better have small hands, because that's going to be far away and it's going to be down in the crevice there against the glass. So this thing is pretty big, but it makes you feel like you're in a big greenhouse. And in fact, for me, I have pretty broad shoulders, and I was worried, am I going to feel like this is leaning in, kind of claustrophobic for me? But this is a huge window over here, so there's nothing about this that makes it feel feel small until you maybe get in the back or something. But generally, when I'm sitting here, I'm sitting nice and upright. It's very, very comfortable. I have great visibility. I'm just telling you, the visibility is pretty awesome. Even though the A-pillar is a little more far forward than you would expect in this car, because you kind of expect it right about here, I think, in most cars, because of the way the windshield is. You have this little extra window, which I pointed out, so it gives you some visibility there. And while this is thick, it doesn't seem to be at a point where it intrudes on anything that I do. So even if I'm looking down here across traffic, I have plenty of visibility there. If I'm looking up at the lights, or if I'm looking at a sidewalk or something. So while the A-pillar is big, the placement is actually not really that bad. So I actually really like what they've done here. And you know, for a broad-shouldered person, you don't feel like you are being squeezed in. You don't feel like you're being swaddled by the car at all, which is really nice. Now, I do have the key in my pocket, so I'm going to go ahead and actually just hit the engine start stop here. Again, keyless, so I definitely like that. And this is going to roar to life. Now, a couple things that I like about this is that you do have this pretty big touchscreen here, and I'm just going to turn that off for a second because I just wanted to show you that what I love about this is that there is no warning at all, whether you have to accept it or reject it or don't do anything to it. It doesn't tell you, you know, looking at the screen while you're driving could kill you. You know, that is very standard in a lot of cars, and in some cars like my Maserati, I actually have to hit accept before I can use anything like the radio. It's really kind of annoying. I can't even wait 10 minutes and let it go away on its own. So I like the fact that there's no screen at all there, and I think that's actually a big advantage, and I think it's something that pretty much everyone should do. It also has Apple CarPlay, so it's down here in this little drawer, and one of the things that I do like is that this little door here has this little switch, and the nice thing about it is the door goes up, but if you just push the switch up just like that, you're kind of pushing the switch to disengage and the door up at the same time. So it's a nice little well thought out switch because it's just really natural. Now down here we have a couple of USB ports. On one of these USB drives, I actually took a very small flash drive, copied MP3s to it, and now the car reads it as a media drive if I want to play it off there. So I have lots of songs already in the car whether I have my phone or not. The other one, I plugged in this little lightning cable, and now I can have Apple CarPlay right up here. So I really like that because it's built in, it's not an extra charge. Android Auto, CarPlay, I think a lot of people are expecting that. A lot of people will give up radio and navigation and all that stuff if you can just plug into your car. And I see so many car companies, even 2021, 2022 models, offering it as an add-on, like other technology package, which is totally stupid. So I love the fact that that is standard feature there. Kudos to GM for making that decision. Now, one of the things that is really interesting about this, and you can hear, you can hear that the fan is roaring there as it's trying to cool off the car. And one of the funny things about this is that when the fan is going, I was actually pulling out my phone to make a phone call while I was in the car. But what ends up happening here is if I make a call with my phone and the fan is blowing, what it will do is it will shut off these upper fans and then blow out of the bottom to reduce the disturbance and the noise. So it's actually really smart. I love that GM does that. I don't have to be plugged in for CarPlay. I can just be connected to Bluetooth, hands-free, and it will do that. So whenever it detects a phone call, if the fans aren't at a low speed, it will automatically either move them to a low speed or redirect the air somewhere else. So it's really nice little details like that that the engineers put in that I really appreciate and like. Now I do want to go ahead and press the brake and push this into reverse because we do have a backup camera, and what I love about this is even though the backup camera isn't great, we do have trajectory lines and they do move and they are pretty accurate. So I really love that. I love movable trajectory lines because they are so helpful, especially if you're not one that backs up a lot and you're not sure, is my car going to go this way or this way? When I turn the steering wheel, it just kind of takes the thought out of it. So if I'm doing it the wrong way, I can easily say, whoops, that's not the right way, and move it to the other direction. Now I will say what's interesting is if the car has been turned off for a while, right, and I fire this thing up from a dead stop and I go into reverse right away before the whole system is booted up, I've noticed that the screen will come on and I don't have trajectory lines yet, and then they will kind of come on as they are loaded. So it doesn't happen very often, and I don't know that we're jumping in cars, do like a combat escape or anything, but I have noticed that sometimes when I've gone ahead, punch this up, turn this into park, and brought up the screen, that the lines aren't there quite yet, and as I'm backing out, then those lines will appear. So it can possibly happen depending on how fast you are in trying to reverse out of your spot. Now, I also want to say here, I'm going to go ahead and put this back into drive. This has automatic climate control. That was actually a must-have for me in this car. So that's why I didn't go with the low-end Encore, because it was still the standard, like you control the blower speed. This model, the Sport Touring, and then the higher model, the Preferred, have the automatic climate control. I really like it. What I would say that I don't like is that the way you set these is you have a little translucent indicator right there, and that lights up at night, but it's not simple to see. It's not easy to see against that chrome. So in daylight, you're not going to really move these much. But I went to the auto shop and had some work done, and they had turned these all the way down, and I didn't even notice it. Just the fan was blowing so hard. I was like, why is the air conditioning working so hard today? And that's because they moved them all there, but I couldn't tell until I realized, oh, they turn these all the way down, and it's not that easy at a glance to see where that is when you are returning them back to normal here. So you do have dual zone here as well, so you can definitely set one differently than the other. The only way to sync them is manually here, right? So you can't do a automatic sync and have this return to a certain temperature. So they're hardware buttons, not software buttons, and you turn the auto on and off by pressing that. On the higher trim model, you'll have a heated steering wheel, which you would press this button to do. And then on the higher trim, you'll also have heated seats, which will be this button for the driver's side and this button for the passenger side. So that is one of the things that I don't like. So we do have button blanks where I don't have the heated seats. If you have like lane departure and adaptive cruise control, that will be those buttons. But I think even on the top trim, these will always be button blanks, I believe. And so what you have here are a lot of button blanks. They're not the most egregious thing ever. The other thing I actually really like is this light colored headliner. It kind of gives the car a little bit more of an open, airy feel. So it's very common for headliners to be the same color as the interior. Black is very common, but generally I don't like light colors because they tend to be dirty a lot or show dirt a lot. But in this car, it actually makes it look a little more open and airy, especially that I have a black interior everywhere else. So I really actually like that too. Another thing that I like for no real good reason is this manual parking handle. It's kind of got this little cantilever Z shape to it. So it's not like a traditional parking brake lever that pivots down here. It's just right here, and you can lift it up. And I like the fact that it's mechanical. It would actually probably be better to have it electronic and have the space used for something a little more useful, but it's kind of nice. I think this is a carryover because this was a European car originally, and they tend to have more manual parking levers, but it's kind of a good looking parking lever. I like it. I like that it's so short and yet gives me that feel of it. I don't use this very often, but it's one of those things that I like. And obviously we have the cup holders there, so it's not intruding on that, and I have pretty nice sized cup holders, but there's absolutely zero logical reason to have this, but I like it. I also like the fact that the shifter knob here feels nice. So we have the soft touch material right here. We have the shiny material here. It's actually very similar to the Chevy Cruze that I had years ago. But what I like is this full boot here, as well as the lights here for the indicators are behind this piece of plastic. So it gives it a nice sleek look without having a lot of areas where you can drop crumbs and get stuff in and look chintzy. So this feels good in the hand. And then I also like here that this is covered up so you don't have a post just riding on a track, which tends to make things look really cheap. This little vinyl boot here is actually one of those small details that give you a more premium feel, and that's why I guess they call this near luxury. I hate that term, but I would say that this is definitely better than just a dressed up Chevy. It definitely feels a little nicer. It actually looks a little bit like the Cadillac XT4 in terms of the style here in the interior, so I do give them props for doing that. Now, some of the things that I don't really love is that, obviously, as I mentioned, the thick A pillars, but the B pillars here are a little far forward. So you can see here, the chair is kind of where you would want it to be, but the B pillar is kind of like where you would look. So even though I'm 5'8", what I will have here is the B pillar right here. So it's kind of like if I'm leaning over my shoulder to look into my blind spot, it's going to be intrusive. Now, I think in the Alfa Romeo Giulia, the B pillar is even a little further forward. It's not something I have to navigate around to get in or out. I don't know that they could do anything else, but sometimes if it's a little further back, it just makes you feel like you have a much bigger opening. Now, that being said, I have to look over my shoulder here to check my blind spot because I do not have the blind spot monitoring. So you'll have a little yellow warning light here in the glass on those that are equipped with it. I wish this had it. It's just one of those nice little safety features that's good to have. It gives you a little extra reassurance in case you can't take a really comprehensive look sometimes, but this one does not have it for whatever reason, so I'm disappointed that that's not there. And in fact, something else that's missing is up here. Even though I have a sunroof on here, I don't have a garage door opener like the HomeLink system. I actually have to put my garage door opener here, which is silly because I would say I like having a sunroof, but I don't. I actually never use a sunroof. They only wear out. They sometimes will eventually leak. The seals will go bad, whatever. I almost never use them. If I want open air, I'll just roll down my windows. I don't like being bathed in the sunlight because it kind of cooks me. It kind of makes the cars feel like a greenhouse. And so I would rather give up the sunroof here, which I don't know how much it costs to put in, but let's call it $500, and rather get HomeLink, the universal garage door opener, and the blind spot warning, you know, and some of those other things, and like the seat heaters here. I would happily trade that off for any one of those or all of them, because I don't want the sunroof at all. I think the panoramic glass roofs, I don't know, maybe you use them, but to me they just seem like a waste. All right, this car also, and you would have it right here. So if you see this little cutout area, on the higher trim models, they have memory presets. This one does not, but this is where the preset would be. That's disappointing. I would really like that, especially if you have a couple people that might use this in your household. It's really nice to have those sometimes. If you take it to an auto shop or a valet and they move the seat, it's really nice to be able to hit those presets. So I miss having those. The other thing that I get why they did it, it's simpler on production to kind of go with a single color, but one of the things that I actually liked on the original Buick Encores is that they had a pretty diverse color selection available in the original Buick Encore, so you could kind of get this brown, like this mocha color. I really like that. I actually wouldn't mind, like, you know, chocolate covered or brown leather seats or something like that. So they actually did a really nice job of kind of giving you that upscale vibe, you know, the kind of customization that you can't do in this particular car. Again, I think this all looks unified and it looks pretty good, but I do miss the fact that I can't get some of those really nifty looking, you know, baseball glove leather types of seats that you could in the original Encore. So that's a little bit of a miss there. The other thing that I don't like here is that while you do have an armrest here and it's pretty comfortable for the driver, it's like an airplane armrest. It's very, very thin. It's only a few inches wide, and you don't get one on the passenger seat. So I don't know why they don't put one over here too. And I get that maybe they would rub on each other, maybe there's just not enough space, but man, I would rather have a center console with a non-adjustable armrest so that both people could use it, because if you're going to ride in this passenger side seat a long time, it's really awkward to not have any place to put your arms. So I just hate that. That was the same thing that happened on my Fiat 500, the passenger seat, and I think it's because of the size constraints here, but it didn't have an armrest, and that was a big miss. It's one of those small things that can make a lot of difference for a passenger that has to ride there. All right, one of the things that I don't like here is on the steering wheel. So we have this big center piece here. Water falls down to the bottom and it goes all the way to the bottom. And so while it's a 3-spoke, there's no way I can really put my hand down here on the bottom. I actually wish they would have cut it off right here so that I could put my thumb in there, or maybe I could put my fingers in here. It's weird because they have basically the same steering wheel in some of the other GM products, and this is open on some of them. So I don't know if this was just to fill it out and make it look a little different, but I don't like that it's so long and droopy here. It looks like a droop snoot for some reason, and I don't really like it. The other thing that I don't like here is on the door. While I like the materials here, I love the fact that it's flat up here, and I wish they had continued that all the way down. So if you look at some of the Range Rovers, they have a really flat edge. I think the Lincolns and some of those, and the Jaguars too. And the reason is because if I have my window up and I put my arm up here, this is so rounded and so steep, there's really no way to rest my arm on there. And sometimes you just want your arm up high, you want to air it out a little bit, kind of cruise like this. And with the window down, then it's fine, but with the window up, there's just not enough space to put my arm up there. Yes, I can put it down here, but a lot of people like putting it up here, including this guy. And so I just wish this were a little flatter. I wish that this, you know, 3 or 2.5 inch panel extended all the way back here, and this was a little bit more of a shelf just for armrest comfort. The other thing that I think is a miss here is that there's no wireless charging pad, and it's actually a little hard to get it in here because the front edge of this drops down and slants in here, and then you have the flat bottom right here. So I wish that they had put a wireless charging pad or flattened this out a little bit so that I could put in an aftermarket one. You really have to plug in your phone, and just sometimes it's nice to just drop the phone in and get a little bit of a charge while you're driving. Now, the other thing that is weird here, it's not something that I totally hate, but I am used to actually pushing these vents to blow up so that you get that kind of laminar airflow across the top roof of the car so that you get air that goes all the way to the back. This is as high as these vents point up. So they'll point down, but they don't go up any higher. This is kind of like blowing at my neck right there. And so I'm used to them having a little bit more travel. Now, I think it's because of how these are shaped. So the back of the vent can't go down because of how much this angle's up right there. But I would think that you could do it on these center vents, but you can't do it either. These will blow maybe up to my face, but no higher. You definitely can't move them up any higher than that. So you can see I can get them to blow down, or kind of in the middle, but not up. It's a little weird. Obviously, you do have the side to side, but down and middle, but no up. So it's kind of a weird thing. I wish I could angle them up higher, especially for the comfort of my backseat passengers when I have them. The other thing that I don't really like is that these little door pulls here, while they work, you know, I feel like I'm grabbing them with my fingertips because these little troughs here aren't very deep. This is something that's been in GMs for as long as I can remember here, just not very deep little handles here. And I think maybe people put some change and stuff in there, so they want to be able to access it and they don't want it to fall down too far. But I really like when they're really deep, so you can get a good purchase on that and close that door. But again, not very deep. One of the things I do like down here is that you have this knee door, so I put an air tag in there. If you have really small sunglasses, you could probably fit those in there. I use XL ones because my head is so fat, so they don't fit in there or won't close right. But it's kind of nice. I don't know what else you might use this for, but it's nice if you as a driver have stuff that you want to have separate, quick, easy access to. You can put it right in there, so it's kind of nice that that little door is there. I definitely like that. The other thing that I think is a little weird here, and if I go to the navigation, not all of these are equipped with navigation, but this one is. And so one of the things that's weird about this is that the navigation here is a little off-centered. What they do is they put some key information like turns and destination on the right side of the screen, and then they push the live navigation to the left side of the screen, so it's always a little off-centered. So you would expect the road that you're driving on to kind of come right up the middle of the screen, but it's always coming out from the left corner a little bit, and it's a little weird because it's like you're in a drone off to the side of your car looking at your car, so it's not quite as intuitive. To be honest, I would rather use the navigation on Apple CarPlay on this head unit because that seems to be so much more like what we're used to. So I'm not sure why they did that. I can't figure out anywhere in the settings to get rid of this little inset window that they put in there, but you know, it is what it is, and I'm sure after some time you would just get used to that. So I don't really like the onboard navigation that much. But one of the cool things is that if you use the onboard navigation, you can actually change this middle screen on the instrument cluster to show you the next turn. So it'll show you the arrows and those types of things. So if I go to menu here and then I go down to navigation and I select it, now it will show me those navigation directions if I'm using the onboard navigation, but with CarPlay it does not work. So one of the last things I want to show you here in the front is that I have actually reversed these headrests. So you can see now they are kind of in line with the back of the chair, and if I were to reverse these, they would be like 20 degrees angled forward. Now the problem is it's actually angled forward so much that you are tilting your head forward, or you can't put your shoulders against the back of the chairs here. So I actually don't like these headrests in their stock configuration, so I've just reversed them, kind of like what I did in my Fiat 500, and they are so much better now. So I don't like the headrest, but when they are reversed, I do like the headrest. Last thing I want to do here is go ahead and jump in the back because I want to show you some of the things I like and don't like about the back. First of all, as I kind of go up to the back door here, it looks just like a regular SUV, but what is funny is that foot behind that, or 2 feet behind it, we have the end of the car. So that's why, despite this car feeling big, that's why it's so small, because you really don't have probably another 3 feet that you might in every other SUV. So you just pull this door open, jump back in here. Again, this seat is where I would have it as a person that is 5'7", 5'8", and it is just fine. I've decent amount of leg room there. I've got that seat position where I think it's good for most other people, and it's a pretty decent sized leg room. If you are 6 foot, this is going to be a little tight back here, but it works. Now, one of the things that I want to show you here is that I have the windows down, and you can see that the window goes all the way in the door. So in a lot of SUVs or crossovers, the windows stop here because of packaging. Now, part of that is because this little door sill here goes up so high, it kind of kicks up back here. It makes it a little claustrophobic, but because the big part of the window is here and you're looking forward, it does kind of make you feel like you have pretty good visibility. Although if you traverse back here and you're looking over here, man, this gets really small back here, right? But the benefit of that is that the glass completely disappears. Now, the other thing I want to show you here is, even though I'm sitting back here and I am sitting with these headrests in the down position, you are basically being leaned forward. You can see that this is maybe 4 inches pressed forward. Now, you might be saying that those are the dumbest headrests I've ever seen, because who would ever want to sit like that? I mean, basically, you wouldn't use any part of this back. Now you can push this up, and what ends up happening now is that this will kind of fall back into there, and so now it's much more flush. So if you want to have your rear seat passengers comfortable, you definitely want to have these up in the top position. The only problem is if you want them up in the top position, it's going to block off your rear window visibility quite a bit. So that's why it's nice to have them low like this, and that's where I usually will keep them, especially if you want to put the seats down. But if you do have people that jump back here, it's kind of one of those things that you have to remember, like, they're going to be uncomfortable until you remind them that they can move that and then put the headrest up like like that. So it's kind of up to you. You know, if you were going to drive people around a lot, I would leave them in the up position. For me, I usually don't have passengers back here, so it's all right to leave them in the lower position, get better visibility. The other thing that I will tell you here is that we don't have any air vents in the back for passengers. I don't even have a plug so that they can charge their phone or anything, so we have no amenities back here. It's certainly not a resort by any means, but one of the things that we do have are these under-seat air vents, so you do get some air circulation back here for the passengers. It's just going to be on their toes, so that's kind of nice. But like I said, what I would love is to be able to aim those vents a little higher up so that you get the air traveling across the roof lining here, and so people are getting air to them, because it can get a little hot back here. Now, it's probably not going to be the easiest thing to show you, but what you can see is that the headliner is lower here and then cuts up here, so we have this indentation up here, and what that does is allows me as a 5'8" person to not have a headroom problem. If this were the roof line here, it would cut right into the top of my head, and I can touch it if I move forward like this. But if I sit back like that, now I actually have plenty of headroom, and it's a little bit of an illusion that the ceiling is right there. But for me, driving and riding back here, that's not going to be a problem. Now, the other thing that I actually like is that there is an armrest back here, so I can put my arm here, be comfortable. We have a couple of cup holders. I would say that the armrest here is about the same height as the armrest on the door, so that feels pretty normal. The difference here is that this armrest is not very long. So you can see here, if I'm just sitting here comfortably, I have maybe half of my forearm hanging off of it. It wouldn't be bad if it were a little longer. It goes up to here, but I get that they have a packaging issue, but it seems like they could have added a couple more inches there, and I think that would have made a big difference. Now, the other thing I want to show you here is that the seats here fold 60-40, but what is maybe a little different in this is that the 40 is over here and the 60 is over here. Now, I think that that's actually intentional because of the way this front seat works. So if I fold this flat down and then fold this down to put something long in it, what this allows me to do is have that person that was sitting up here before sit back here and actually put this down and be in relative comfort. If I had to lay the 60% down, you can see how narrow this seat would be. This person would be all crunched up. So what that does is allow you to put some long stuff in here and have two people, one driving and then your passenger who would now sit back here, still be in relative comfort. Now, the weird thing about this is that it's a two-step. You have to pull this, and you have this lower styrofoam bottom panel. You know, that is truly styrofoam. It's pretty light, and that goes forward like that, and then you can go ahead and lower this piece. Now, you do have to lower the headrest down, but that will fold down there. And does it get perfectly flat? Well, I have to push this up, but it gets pretty flat, but it's going to be good enough for me to, like I said, on my road trip to sleep on. So I'm going to use a pretty thick air mattress to hopefully take out the uneven areas of it, and then that just goes back down like that. So pretty nice. It's pretty well thought out. I like that. Now, the last thing I want to show you here is that there is this little speaker grill right there. We have them up in the front right there, and that's because this car has active noise canceling. I believe it's by Bose, and so sitting inside this car is a little bit like sitting inside noise canceling headphones. So this car is supposed to be really quiet, and basically what it's supposed to try to do is counteract any of the road noise or the wind noise and the engine noise and make this car quiet enough that you can have a nice conversation in. And so the only way to know what that's going to really be like and to see what the car drives like is to take it for a drive. So let's do that now. All right, so come along for a ride with me in this Buick Encore, and we're just going to cruise around here. A couple things that I have noted as I have been driving this a lot is that the interior here is pretty quiet. Now, I may have mentioned that a little earlier, but it's really not until you get in here that you realize how quiet it is. Now, I want to say that Buick is intentionally doing that, not just on Buick. I mean, Buicks have been kind of known for having these plush, quiet rides, really comfortable. But what I think is, and I've heard that there's laminated glass here, it's quiet tuned suspension, and then inside here, as I've mentioned, the Bose active noise cancellation. So you are kind of inside a pair of Bose headphones canceling noise around you. Now, normally when I do a video like this, I'm usually speaking pretty loudly, because I'm kind of a loud speaker anyway, but I'm speaking pretty loudly because I'm trying to overcome road noise, wind noise, all of those things. Now, it's a warm day here, so the air conditioner is running, but what I want to do here, and I'm going to talk loudly through the video, but I'm going to talk quietly here, I'm going to keep lowering my voice volume here, because I think, you know, especially if you have someone here in the passenger side and you're talking to them, you can just talk in a normal voice like this. You can almost whisper. Now, it's not completely isolated from the rest of the world like it would be in maybe a really high-end luxury car, but what I've noticed here is that you can have a conversation without straining, even talking in a low voice, where sometimes when I'm talking in a quiet, hushed voice like this in a car, the problem is they're like, what was that? What did you say? Because there's just so much white noise going on. So I really like that. It's, like I said, one of the reasons I got this, because I just wanted it to be quiet. I wanted to be able to take phone calls without people saying like, are you in a tunnel or inside a coffee can or something? So that works really well. I can tell you I've made plenty of phone calls and I've just asked about how the quality is, and people said, oh, I couldn't even tell. It sounds great. So this quiet, noise canceling isolation chamber here is probably my favorite thing about this. Now, I will also say that I think what contributes to that is the 18-inch wheels. So you could obviously go bigger. 18 inches isn't huge by any modern standards, but I think they're fine for this car, even though they still look a little small. You would think that 18-inch wheels on a small compact crossover like this would look pretty big. I still think they look a little small, but I think they look appropriate. But that gives you a lot of sidewall, so that gives you kind of a nice cushion, floaty ride, and it doesn't mean that you feel every pothole or undulation in the road. And so I think it's a really good balance. Now, the drawback to that is that in this small crossover size here, you actually don't have a really long wheelbase. So while I won't say that I feel like I'm rocking back and forth, if you put more wheelbase under your car, you get more of that luxury ride. You don't have the impact from a road crease in the front and then immediately in the back to kind of oscillate you really quickly. You get it in the front, then in the back in a delayed fashion, longer wheelbase. And so a short wheelbase like this, I would say that you get a little bit of that harshness. I haven't noticed that as much. I was really kind of paying attention to that because I have some cars, some sedans that have longer wheelbase than this, and they ride really nice. I think what I've noticed the most, though, is, as I mentioned, on those tires, they're probably inset a little bit more. The track on this is a little narrower than I would like visually. And what that means is that you do get a little more, I call it wobble, than you do in some other cars. On turns, it's not like I feel like I'm rolling over, but when you move the car around just a little bit, I feel like my body is actually compensating, kind of like you do on a bicycle. The bicycle moves and you kind of compensate. I kind of feel my shoulders kind of move in my seat a little bit more as my body doesn't want to move. The inertia just wants to hold it in place, and the car is moving just a little bit. Now, I wouldn't say you get in this car, you have a friend that drives an Encore, you get in, you're like, man, I feel like this car is wobbling all over the place. It's pretty subtle, and even though I've been driving it at decent speeds, highway speeds, windy days, those types of things, I just feel like it's more noticeable than it was in my Audi A4, right? Which just doesn't have the side profile, doesn't have the surface area that wind is going to act on like it does in this car. And again, kind of that narrower track and a wide body to give you some space. It's a little subtle, but you just get a little bit more of that lean, a little bit more of that wobble. Feels just a little bit more squirrely than some of the other cars that you might drive. Not a huge deal. Now, the trade-off on that is that you have kind of this narrow track, kind of like a train car, but then you have this pretty wide body. Now, side to side here, door to door, it's not really that big, but what they do here, and I mentioned, is this huge glass, which is pretty upright. You've got this huge windshield, so you have this huge greenhouse around you, and everything about this feels like a large car. So you feel, even though I can reach over and I have to lean a little bit to touch that door, and there's not really a large center armrest here, what you do feel like is you've got just a lot of space. You don't feel claustrophobic in the front of this car. Front, mind you, I feel like I'm driving a full-size SUV. I've driven Grand Cherokees and the Range Rover and stuff like that, and I would say that there's nothing about getting in this car that makes me feel even smaller. It's really the fact that this has a very short cargo area, and that's really where they've lopped off a lot of space and a little bit on the sides to make it a little bit more narrow, but you don't feel it, which is really nice. It just feels like a bigger car, and it's not until you get out of it and look back and you're like, man, I drove up in that. It seems a little smaller than I thought it would be. Let's talk about power now. So a lot of people have said, this car is like a 10-second 0 to 60 car and things like that. And I don't actually know what the 0 to 60 on this is. I do know that a lot of the torque in this engine is available down low. So even though it's a pretty small 1.4 liter 4-cylinder, it is turbocharged though. You get a lot of that torque right here. So I'm kind of just rolling at 25 miles an hour. If I hit it, man, I mean, I feel like the power comes on pretty quickly. It's an automatic transmission, so there's just a little bit of delay when you stab it. But I feel like the power is where you need it. I don't know that a lot of people are racing to 0 to 60 as fast as they can. On ramps or something like that, you might have that throttle mash to the floor. But I feel like it's totally adequate. And actually, versus my other car, like my Maserati or something, there's almost too much power. It actually is kind of uncomfortable if you're not used to driving it, because a lot of people, when they drive it and I'm in the car, they inadvertently stab that gas pedal. You're kind of just doing a lot of this back and forth, a lot of acceleration, a lot of heavy braking to compensate for it. And so the nice thing about not having a lot of power is that the car is just smoother. It's smoother off the line, and it's good for your passengers. It's good for you for ride quality and comfort. But one of the things I've noticed here is that I have never at any point said, man, this is really underpowered. Now, I could probably say that about every car, even if it had 400 or 500 horsepower, but this car totally feels adequate. So I know some people have said it's a little sluggish. I feel like, and this is just my opinion, that a lot of people who review cars with 300-400 horsepower, sports cars, hypercars, a lot of those types of things. And now when you're pegging and placing the Buick Encore, yeah, it's way at the bottom of the barrel. But I think for most of us that are just doing daily driving around the cities and the suburbs, to the grocery store, to the golf course, on a road trip, everything about this is just fine. So it's just adequate across the board, and I've never gotten into it thinking, man, I need more, or, you know, it doesn't have enough or anything like that. It's just never really seeped in. I only bring that up because when I say adequate, I just leave it at that. But so many people have said, and that's what I was worried about actually getting this, that it's underpowered, that I was going to think that it was going to be really, really sluggish. In fact, my father has a Jeep Cherokee, one of the original versions, not the later version. I don't know if there was a change in it, but I know it had two engines, and he has the base engine on it, and that base engine is pretty sluggish. There are definitely times, whether it's making a turn or whatever, and you're on the gas and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't think it needs a lot more power, but man, if it had 10 more horsepower, 15 more horsepower, you know, and what you're really probably wanting is a little more torque on the low end there. But there are lots of times that I've been in that car, and I don't even daily drive that I've thought, man, just a little more power would be nice. So anyway, Buick Encore, power, adequate. All right, we're coming into a turn here. I want to talk about the handling a little bit. This car tends to understeer, which is probably not something that would surprise you. It's not meant to be a performance car, but there have been times, and now that I've been driving this, I'm kind of dialed in on it. There have been times when I have actually crossed over the line that I'm supposed to be inside of in a turn, you know, and that's kind of disconcerting, because if you're taking a hard 90-degree turn and there's a car in the other lane, you know, you want to make sure you're on that turn. And so one of the problems here is that, especially at the beginning, this car understeers a lot, and you find yourself taking turns wide. There is a second reason for that, I think. Well, there's actually two contributing things to that, which I think are unique about this car. One, the turning radius isn't great. So when you are trying to pull into a parking spot, so, you know, I was at a Costco and there was an open parking spot, and, you know, you're kind of slowly creeping through the parking lot and you find a spot. So it's not like I overshot it, but in every normal car, I'm in the position where, okay, I'm just going to crank on the wheel and turn into that parking spot. And I found myself having to do a 2-point turn because I couldn't actually make it. Whereas on every other car, even my big sedan, I was able to make those turns. So this car, the turning radius, while it's certainly not the worst I've ever seen, is certainly not super tight. You know, the Fiat 500 that I had was probably the best turning radius ever. I could turn that thing around in 2 lanes of road, you know, a 2-lane road. But this car has a really wide turning radius for whatever reason, and I'm not totally sure why that is, but it just may be the way the car is packaged and that it was built on top of that Sonic platform. But I think that's one of the reasons. So you don't get this really aggressive turn on the wheels like you do in some other cars, and my guess is maybe it's 10%, 15% less aggressive than it is on other cars, but then you find yourself turning the wheel maybe a full revolution, and it's not producing the turn that you would expect in other cars. All right. The other thing about this car, and I think it contributes to it, is it has a really strong return to center bias. So one of the things that I remember many years ago, a buddy of mine had a Saab Viggen. It was front wheel drive, and when you got on the gas, you could hardly keep the car centered. The wheel wanted to jerk you side to side here. So when you were driving it under acceleration, man, you were kind of fighting to get it back to center. This car has a crazy on-center bias. So if I just let go of the wheel, it's going to stay dead center. If I turn the wheel, it actually produces more resistance than I would probably like. You actually feel it. I mean, in some ways, I actually thought, oh man, am I low on power steering fluid or something like that? It's not hard. It's certainly not like you're going to work out and be sore when you get home. But when you turn, I feel like the wheel is kind of pulling you back to center already. And that's another reason that I think you tend to understeer on this, or you don't take the turns that aggressively, because muscle memory wise, you're just not used to having the steering wheel pull back just even that slight amount more than most other cars. And so you find yourself taking turns wide. And that may be, like I said, because of the turning radius of the car or whatever. But if you are turning, and I've noticed this when navigating parking lots and stuff, when I turn into a lane and I just let go of the wheel, it'll just basically spin back to center. That's how much it wants to be centered on these cars. So it just wants to stay dead straight. Don't drive without your hands, but I'm just saying that if for some reason you let go of the steering wheel, you're reaching for something, just expect that car to shoot back to the middle. And these cars are pretty popular. Look at that. Got a Buick Encore right in front of me. Same color. Looks like it might be the same package. This looks a little cleaner though. Guess he's got a lot of free time. But man, I do like driving it. It's pretty comfortable. I would also say that I still get some road noise. You know, I was kind of thinking, oh, it's going to be a Buick, active noise cancellation. It's going to be dead quiet in here. And it's pretty quiet. You can hear the fan motor running. You can have a conversation. It feels a little tuneish, but you can hear the road noise too. And I was actually looking at, you know, when I get a new set of tires on this, I think that can make a big difference to go to a set of tires that are actually really quiet. So I might do that just to see if I can tone it down even more, make it super quiet in here. Because like I said, I mean, it's not bad, I think, to have a car that's just super quiet. You just don't have the rattles. Everything is really well insulated. This is a car that you can take a road trip on, drive with coworkers, have a conversation, have a business conversation without people shouting, feeling like they are in a cheap rattle box, tin can or something like that. It definitely punches above its weight class, I think. You know, one of the things that I hate about the term of Buick was always near luxury, which was funny because most of the time Buicks were very thinly reskinned Chevys, and so even the interiors were very, very similar. And I was always like, how is a Chevy not near luxury and the Buick is? Because they're almost exactly the same. I would say now there's more separation, and when I get into this car and drive it, you know, and I look around at it, I am pretty impressed by the materials. I actually got this because I thought like I said, the instrument cluster here in the center console was nicely integrated. It's not like overwhelmingly nice, but it's just better than a lot of cars, you know, particularly the Jeep Renegade, which I was almost going to get, but that just looked too discombobulated for my taste. And so, does it have a luxury car feel? Yeah, more so than probably any Buick or any Chevy product I have seen, to be really honest, including Cadillac. You know, even the Cadillacs, you know, currently maybe are stepping it up a little bit, but this Buick Encore is as nice as, you know, I used to have a Cadillac CTS. It's nicer than that early generation CTS, and it's certainly nice as the Cadillac ATS that my buddy had. So I'm actually pretty impressed with this. You know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, this interior would have been passable for a Cadillac, and people would have gotten in it and given it decent reviews. Whereas I always scratch my head and I thought, well, you know, the fit and finish isn't quite as good as, you know, the comparable Mercedes or Audi or those types of cars, but it's pretty good. I feel like it's 80% of the way there for a lot of us who aren't going to spend the money, you know, honestly 2x, 3x times the money to get a similar car that just has maybe a little bit better fit and finish, a little bit more design intention throughout. This gets you pretty darn close. You don't look at anything, you're like, man, this feels cheap. Or, you know, it's just good materials, and you feel like you're being taken care of at a price point that you can afford. To me, this whole car is a little bit like the big front seat in Spirit Airlines. You know, I've flown Spirit. Spirit is a discount airline. Everything's a la carte, but you can just buy what you want. And for me, I want to get from A to B on an airline, and I would love the big seat. I can't always get it, and you can't afford first class because those are like 3, 4, 5 times the cost of economy. But for a $24 upgrade, $30 upgrade, you can get this big front seat, so you can get this really comfortable seat. I can get from A to B and, you know, spend 3 hours on an airplane and be comfortable and not break the bank. And this is what this is to me. To me, this is people saying, hey, I am on a budget, I have to be realistic about what I spend, but I do want to drive around in a quiet car. I do want to drive around in a comfortable car, and I want to enjoy it and get in it and say, this is a good place to be, and this is the car to do it. Man, I think this actually is almost the best of all worlds, because you get some utility, you get a small car that's a good urban runabout, a grocery getter, you've got a car that's comfortable for 4 adults, and you could road trip on this, and I think that it's really a good balance. It's not the worst of all worlds where you get a really big car with all cheap interior and it's a terrible gas mileage and not really good ride quality and really loud and noisy. So this is just a car that's the right size. You can jump in it, run your errands, do whatever you need to do, and I think it's a car that you can enjoy and be proud to own. So everything about it is nice and sharp. I would definitely recommend it. Hey, if you want to pick up some accessories for your Buick Encore, I have a bunch that I'm going to be showing you to do some of the small tweaks and upgrades that make this car my own. I will put links to those in the description below. Peter Von Panda, out.
We can discover more and explore so much deeper. We can live better than ever, thanks to Peter Von Panda.